In this video, I want to show you how to design a no-code data infrastructure, a reporting system that doesn't actually require a developer. So let's jump right in. Hi there, my name is Ruben and I'm a data strategist and professional treasure hunter and an expert in data and decision making. And I help many companies design very custom advanced data infrastructures that capture data from multiple touch points, centralizes it, and then you can visualize it in real time. There's a lot of different ways of slicing this, but one of the areas that I find really exciting is the entire no-code movement. This is perhaps somewhat recent, last couple of years, and the goal is how you build things, whether it's products, reporting systems, data, it doesn't matter, without using any code. So this is a bit of hacking, but it's also becoming a lot more reliable. So I actually worked recently on a project to help a company build a no-code data infrastructure. So I want to share what I did for them, give you some ideas they can then replicate with your own systems. So I'm gonna be looking at my laptop here on my left side, so you can see my screen, and then we'll kind of switch here in the video to the screen and then the video here to go along. So I'm gonna take you through a few principles. Remember, a data infrastructure has 5 elements. It doesn't matter how advanced it is, how simple it is, whether it's no code or advanced code, it always has 5 elements. You have to collect data, you have to store it, you have to clean it somehow. This is where you start to standardize it. You have to visualize it. So you have to create reports and dashboards. You can have some monitoring, so you know if things are working, things are breaking or not. So even the simple no-code infrastructure actually has the 5 elements built in, and I'll show you different options for each one. But this is really how you build a data infrastructure, no matter how advanced or how early you might be. So let me jump in here to my computer and you'll see in front of you this process chart. So you'll see that there's my 4 stages, and I'll show you how the 5 elements I just talked about play in here. So first, we have data sources on the far left. So this could be a product, this could be a CRM, email tools. You can have tools like Google Analytics, Mixpanel. You might have some manual data. We'll call that Google Sheets because it's one of the easiest things to connect to. You might have other data. Maybe you have offline CSVs, Excel that you want to upload. So you know, 4 or 5 things is pretty common for a company. You might have 10. That's actually not crazy. So once we have data sources, the first thing we need to do is build some kind of connector. We got to take the data from where they are, the product, CRM, doesn't matter, and send it somewhere else. There's a few connectors here. For this no-code infrastructure that I recently built, I use Zapier quite a bit. Zapier was taken from the product itself, and then we send the data somewhere else. I'll talk about that in a second. You also have Tray.io. Tray.io is similar to Zapier. It's a little bit more advanced, a little bit more for bigger businesses, but it allows you to connect to different APIs and then create this automated flows of data or workflows, I think they call them. And there's of course a couple competitors to Zapier and Tray.io. So there's 4 or 5, maybe 10 options here. I also came up with a CSV importer to make it easier for people to import CSVs. This is almost unavoidable, but I didn't want people to copy and paste. That creates a lot of human error possibilities. So there's a couple CSV importers here, and I actually do have some of the links here. So just to confirm, this is Zapier. This is quite popular, quite well known as a way to take different apps, and there's 200, 300, 400 integrations here that automatically have triggers. So when a new customer is added, that creates a trigger and then you get data out of it. And this integrates with a bunch of things. Tray.io is a similar idea. It's a little bit more advanced. You can connect to almost anything really through it, and they have connectors as well. Then something like an easy CSV is what I was using for a CSV importer. So I can create routes where basically, it's expecting a certain number of columns. So people can just upload a CSV, they double check the columns, and then they send it somewhere. So again, this is a connector, right? So this makes it easier for people to upload offline files without having to do copy and paste, human input. Now, if we go back to our infrastructure, we need storage. When I did storage, I wanted a database, and I wanted something that was easy to manage. So I ended up using a Postgres database. It could be MySQL, it could be anything else. It could be a data warehouse, really. But I found Postgres, and then I found this Postgres SQL as a service called Elephant SQL, but there's options here, of course. And this is just a managed database. You could do this directly in AWS if you feel comfortable. But if not, there is this services like this, which are actually running on AWS. The database I have actually is stored in AWS, but the interface is much easier to use to build, to start up the database and then to manage it, to add things, to add backups and so on. And the pricing here is quite affordable. I'm talking about $10, $20 a month to start, going up to hundreds depending on how much data you might have. So I love services like this. Once I had a Postgres database, all my connectors could actually flow into it. So Zapier can send the data into a Postgres database. EasyCSV can send the data to Zapier and then to a Postgres database. database, and I just had to create the tables, the rows and columns, and I can just store data. So all of a sudden I had 5, 6, 10 different data sources flowing into the same database in an almost automated fashion, with the exception of the CSVs, which have to be manually updated. So you can see that's our storage here. And this is much better than Google Sheets. I think a lot of companies started to build this in Google Sheets where they have all the data, but Google Sheets has limits and rows and so on. It's not really built for that. Airtable 2 is not really built for this. So a Postgres database is much simpler, or any kind of database like MySQL and so on. Now, some of them will go to nothing. That is, you actually don't have to host them. Google Analytics, an example. I wouldn't want to pull Google Analytics to a database. It's possible, but I can also connect to it directly, and I'll show you why in a second when we get to the BI tool portion, the way to visualize it. And Google Sheets will play a role. So you might have some data that's very small. I'm talking about very small. One tab with maybe 20 rows that you're updating on a weekly basis. That can stay in Google Sheets, and that could be visualized easily by something else. But if you have hundreds of rows, thousands, millions of rows, you really don't want to be in Google Sheets. You want to put them in somewhere more stable, like a database. So once I have my storage, I now have look for a BI tool. And here there's tons of options. Google Data Studio. There's Grow, for example, which is a little bit more intermediate, and it allows you to build reports and dashboards without knowing SQL. There's Clipfolio. Clipfolio actually has a new product called Power Metrics, which I really like, and it's what I use in this project. And it allows you to connect again to a Postgres database quite easily, but you also have a bunch of connectors. You have things like Google Analytics, Google Ads, Facebook Ads, and so on. So you can pull data automatically from those services and then visualize it. And that's the reason why some tools don't have a storage, because the data is being stored in the tool itself. The data is stored in Google Analytics, it is stored in Facebook Ads or Google Ads or whatever it may be. So in those cases, we don't have to move them to a database, we just have to connect to them directly. Now, if you wanted to, there's probably a way of doing it to move it into a database. I imagine Tray.io in particular will support that. I'm not sure about Zapier, but you have options here. And that's how we get our infrastructure here. So we have our full steps, right? We have a collection, which happens to the connectors. We have storage, cleaning, where you standardize the data. That actually happens at the connector level. So whether you're in Zapier or Tray or something else, you can actually clean the data and you can rename columns, you can delete columns. This is all what I mean when I talk about cleaning. So that all happens at the connector level. The visualization portion happens at the reporting. That's, Power Metrics, Grow, Data Studio, Databox, doesn't matter, any of those tools. And in the final stage, the monitoring also happens at the connector level. Tools like Zapier, Tray.io, and so on, they can actually notify you if there's errors. So as all these automated things are happening, you can get notifications saying, you know what, hey, this SAP didn't run properly, or there was an error in this workflow, check it out. And that's basically what we want in monitoring. We want to have something that tells us something didn't work as expected, what happened. So this is how you build a no-code infrastructure, and you can actually do it quite quickly. You can build this, I would say, in a few days if you have a focused effort and if you know where the data is coming from. If you have a lot of systems that are very obscure, it will be harder. If your CRM is not Salesforce or Soho or Pipedrive or any of the really popular options, it will be harder, something to keep in mind. But most companies have very standard tech stacks. They use email platforms that are well known, MailChimp, Marketo. They have stuff like Google Analytics, Google Sheets. So a lot of things are very similar. So you will have a lot of integration potential with all these different tools. And that is all I have for today. So that was how to build a no-code infrastructure and how to do it with the 5 elements and the different tools on how to go about it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, like, share. There's a few links in the description below around my weekly newsletter. My first book, The Data Mirage, is out. It's available anywhere you can buy books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters. Finally, leave a comment below with what's one thing that you learned or that you will be applying to your business. Until next time, talk soon.